Do 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 do. Johto a go go. Do 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 do. The second generation of Pokemon was a very interesting time. You see, unlike every other generation, which feels like it's trying to be its own thing, Gen 2 is the only one that feels like a direct sequel. Sure, other games will include callbacks to previous entries, but this generation is the only one that picks up where a previous game left off, expands on plot threads introduced in them, and oh yeah, you can literally visit the region of Gen 1 and see where everyone from those games ended up. But enough about the games. We're here to learn about the Pokemon introduced this generation. We were given 100 new creatures to try out, although for some reason these games were weirdly coy about these new Pokemon considering how rare a lot of them are, and some of them can't even be found until the post-game. But anyway, 100 new Pokemon. Well, actually a good chunk of them were just relatives of previous Pokemon, so that number's a lot lower. Which, thankfully for me, means that this video is going to be done a lot faster than Gen 1. So without further ado, I give you the however many new families introduced in Pokemon Generation 2, starting with Chikorita. This is a line of cute little grass reptile things. I don't know. Anyway, Chikorita is described as being a very friendly Pokemon, absorbing the sun's rays and converting them into a sweet-smelling aroma that gets released whenever it waves its leaf around. It's also said they give off a friendly atmosphere to whoever's around them. At level 16, they evolve into Bayleaf. Unlike Chikorita's pleasant aroma, Bayleaf instead releases a spice from its neck that is known to cause anything that sniffs it to want to fight. And it restores health to the Bayleaf who unleashed the spice. Finally, at level 32, they evolve into Meganium, a sauropod-like Pokemon who goes back to having calming aromas that are said to stop aggressive feelings. In addition, their breath is said to revitalize dead plants, and female Meganium have shorter antennae. Now, one thing to note about this line is that the Chikorita line is basically the Johto game's hard mode. See, if you pick Chikorita, you're in for a miserable time. Not only are the first two gyms strong against grass type, but the main villains mostly fight using poison types, which are strong against grass. And your rival doesn't have any Pokemon weak to grass either, and possesses 3 Pokemon that are strong against you. So yeah, Chikorita's the Pokemon to pick if you're a masochist. Moving on. Cyndaquil is a fiery echidna thing that becomes more like a weasel as it evolves. For Cynda itself, its flames are stored in its back and it's able to jut them out of itself when they feel threatened. And the flames grow more powerful when they're angry, so that's fun. At level 14, they evolve into Quilava, a Pokemon who can shoot even more flames and is nowhere near as timid as Cyndaquil is, making it a lot more dangerous. It's said that if a Quilava turns its back on you, then you should run away immediately. Also, they're completely fireproof, which is thankfully something not reflected in gameplay as fire-type moves can still hurt them. Granted, they resist it, but they're not immune to it. So yeah. At level 36, they evolve into Typhlosion, a large bipedal weasel thing with a ring of flames around its neck. Typhlosion is said to be so hot that anything it touches will burst into flames. They can heat up the air around them to make themselves look blurry to their foes. It can even rub its fur together to create explosions! So yeah, not something you'd want around the house. In the past, Typhlosion was instead part ghost type, and its fire was said to purify lost souls before leading them to the afterlife. It's theorized this form came around due to an energy emitted by a local sacred mountain. So yeah, fire rats that used to be sacred. Pretty cool. And now we reach my favorite starter Pokemon of all time, Totodile line. They're very dopey looking crocodiles. Don't let its cute appearance fool you. Their jaws are very powerful, and unfortunately for its trainer, Totodile isn't aware of its own strength. So as such, when it playfully nips something, it ends up seriously injuring it. So keep an eye on them and don't let their fangs near you. At level 18, they evolve into Croconaw, a much more actively vicious Pokemon. When Croconaw bites something, it will never let go, and because their teeth are barbed, they're almost impossible to get out. Also, just like real crocodiles, if they lose a tooth, they'll just grow one back, ensuring that they always have 48 fangs to attack with. Finally, at level 30, they evolve into Feraligatr. These guys are described as tearing their prey to shreds by shaking them around aggressively. They're also said to be surprisingly fast, as when angry, they can run at top speeds, ensuring prey doesn't get away. Notably, despite being depicted as bipedal in artwork, the Pokédex actually claims these guys can't stand on 2 legs for very long out of water and prefer to be quadrupeds. So that's a thing. You know, I just kinda want to vent about something real quick. I find it really stupid whenever people find out Pokemon eat meat and they're like, OMG, childhood ruined! Like, did you really think all Pokemon are herbivores? Did you think that those sharp teeth were for slicing spinach? Ugh, sorry, but I just find it annoying how everyone freaks out when it's revealed that a Pokemon eats meat or that people eat Pokemon. So, anyway, on with the video. Sentret is a weird little raccoon-like thing, and Johto's early route mammal. Described as being very cautious, Sentret will stand on its tail in order to get a better view of its surroundings. They're also said to be a group species, with one of them staying awake while the others sleep to make sure there aren't any predators nearby. In fact, it's straight up said that when they're alone, they're too scared to sleep. No, that's adorable. Poor little guys, I just feel bad for them now. At level 15, they evolve into Furret. Yes, a raccoon becomes a ferret. Get used to it, it's not even the weirdest change of this generation. Furret is a very slender Pokemon that is able to dig incredibly complex burrows that are described as being impossible to navigate by anything that's not a Furret. They're also said to be very fast in spite of their short legs, which help them catch prey like Rattatas. Also, it's literally canon that no one knows where its tail begins, so that's kind of funny. And finally, Furret became a minor meme in the fandom due to a trend of having a gif of Furret walking until something specific happens, like remakes getting announced or other things like that. So yeah, Furret. Gotta love it. Who is debatably the early route bird of these generations. I say debatable because it's actually kind of an argument in the fandom over whether or not these guys count as the early route birds. Mostly because they're only found at night, which some people say disqualifies them, and one person even infamously tried to argue against them by claiming that owls aren't birds. Yes, really. But this is my video, so I say that Hoot Hoot is Johto's early route bird. Change my mind. Anyway, Hoot Hoot is a spherical owl that while it appears to only have one leg, it actually has two. It just likes standing on one leg for whatever reason. These birds are also great at keeping time, thanks to a special organ they have that allows them to sense the rotation of the Earth. As such, some people use them instead of clocks to keep time, especially since they always call at specific times no matter what. At level 20, they evolve into Noctowl, who sadly loses all time-related aspects and becomes basically a regular owl. It flies silently and hunts in low light and is very precise. If you ask me, I think it would have been cool if they had kept the time motif up, but Noctowl is still a pretty cool looking Pokemon, I guess, so it's fine. LEDYBA is a ladybug. Described as being very timid, these Pokemon are said to be very scared to move if they're alone, but when they're in groups, they're a lot more confident. They also give off various bodily fluids used to indicate mood, and during the winter, much like real ladybugs, they'll cluster themselves up in large groups to keep warm. At level 18, they evolve into Ledian, a very strange Pokemon in that they don't eat when they reach this stage. Instead, they get their energy from starlight, which also affects the amount of spots on their back, with them shifting and changing depending on how many stars are in the sky that night. While they do this, they also release a special dust that's said to cause good luck if it falls on you. Also, because of this new diet, they become nocturnal and sleep through the day now. Very strange Pokemon indeed. And before you ask, no, it's never been implied that they're extraterrestrial, so this is just bizarre. Also, females of this line have shorter antennae, so that's a thing. SPINARAK is a spider with 6 legs instead of 8. Given the face on its back, it's likely based on the Hawaiian happy face spider, so that's a fun fact. SPINARAK will spin a web in trees and wait patiently for prey to get trapped in it. Again, I must ask what people who freak out over Pokemon eating each other thought that the spider that spins webs ate. Anyway, they're very in tune with their web, being able to tell exactly what got trapped in it just by the vibrations given off by the struggling prey. At level 22, they evolve into Ariados. This Pokemon is a more active hunter, no longer relying on webs. This guy will instead find small Pokemon and shoot webbing from its mouth to trap it. However, it doesn't eat them then and there. Instead, it lets the prey go. However, what the Pokemon doesn't realize is that the Ariados secretly planted a thin web line to its prey, allowing it to find where the prey lives and find more of it. Well, that's terrifying! On a lighter note, Ariados always has a single line of webbing shooting out from its bottom that allows it to find its house no matter how far it wanders away from it. So yeah, Poke Spiders. Pretty creepy. The Chinchou line are the cutest anglerfish you've ever seen. Chinchou lives in the deepest part of the ocean, uses its light to see, and much like real anglerfish, this light also attracts prey. When the prey comes near the Chinchou, it'll zap it in order to stun it. They also use their lights in order to communicate with each other and make sure other Chinchous don't invade their turf. At level 27, they evolve into Lantern. Yeah, just Lantern. I thought Seal was a lazy name. Anyway, the fish's light is incredibly bright, being able to see from 3 miles above it. This light also helps them find prey, as the brightness ends up stunning them. Also, much like real anglerfish, this light is the result of bacteria living in their sacs. But, unlike real anglerfish, males of this line aren't incredibly small, but hey, still a cool group. Although I do find it weird we got an anglerfish Pokemon before we got a shark Pokemon. But that's a discussion for another day, I guess. Togepi was one of the first Generation 2 Pokemon revealed, appearing in the anime a year before Gold and Silver came out. And it wasn't just a cameo either, it was a main Pokemon who was frequently on screen. So yeah, it was pretty hyped up all things considered. Anyway, Togepi is a sentient egg thing. This baby Pokemon is said to be a lucky charm, with its eggshell said to be filled with pure happiness that it loves to share with others. At high friendship, they will evolve into Togetic, a Pokemon capable of floating without flapping its wings. It's said to mostly appear to kind-hearted people where it'll give them a special dust that causes happiness. Nah. When given a shiny stone, they evolve into Togekiss, a Pokemon that seeks out peaceful areas and gives everyone there good fortune. Unfortunately, though, as the Pokedex says, it has become a rare sighting in recent times. You can probably do the math. So yeah, one of the first Gen 2 Pokemon revealed was the Good Fortune one. I don't get why they picked Togepi of all Pokemon to advertise Gen 2, but whatever. NATU is a green bird based on totem poles. These little guys aren't good at flying, and instead skip along the ground and hop onto tall trees. It has a diet of mostly sprouts. At level 25, they evolve into Xatu, a Pokemon with a massive 1,000-yard stare. This is because it is constantly seeing visions of the past and future simultaneously. It's also mentioned that despite seeing the future, they're not powerful enough to change it. Which is just depressing. Imagine being able to see the future, but knowing you can't do anything about it. That is just... ugh, that's creepy. Also, males have an extra stripe on them, so that's a thing. So, yeah, psychic totem pole birds. Not bad. MAREEP is a fluffy sheep whose electric type is probably a reference to the novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? The wool of this Pokemon is full of static, and as such you should never touch it with your bare hands. The more static they have, the bigger their wool is. In addition, like real wool, there is clothing made from this electric fluff, but it has to be specially processed as to not cause a discharge whenever you put it on. So yeah, cute sheep with painful fluff. At level 15 they evolve into Flaffy, which is based on a sheared sheep. Because of how much electricity they stored, now they're woolless from the neck down, and instead they have rubbery skin that makes them resistant to electricity. This in turn allows them to store more electricity in smaller areas. Finally, at level 30, they evolve into Ampharos. Now completely lacking wool, this Pokemon is now capable of making light so bright they can be seen from space. In old times, Ampharos was even used as a lighthouse to make sure ships don't get lost, and even in the modern day a lot of them work in lighthouses. When Ampharos Mega evolves, all the energy causes it to gain a wool of mane, as well as awakening a long dormant dragon-type gene. Which implies something, but I'm not exactly sure what. So yeah. Electric sheep that robots dream of. I mean androids. Androids. That's what I meant to say. Sorry. Wrong slide. Hold on. The Marill line is a group of muskrat-like creatures that have large spheres for tails. Starting with Azurill, this baby Pokemon has a huge tail full of nutrients it needs to grow. The tail also allows them to keep afloat in the water, and they can swing it around as a defense mechanism. At high friendship, they evolve into Marill, and, fun fact, Azurill and Marill have different gender ratios, meaning that there's a chance that upon evolving, a female Azurill will become a male Marill. At least that's how it used to be. In later generations, they lock their gender so they stay the same upon evolving. So, yeah. Anyway, Marill also becomes a water type. I'm not sure why Azurill is normal, it's never really been explained. And anyway, they have very water-repellent fur, meaning that no matter how much it swims, it'll never be wet. In addition, its tail is full of oil that makes it so that it can never drown, since it'll always bring him back to the surface of the water. MARILL are omnivores, eating both aquatic plants as well as fishing for food. At level 18, they evolve into a Azumarill. Now possessing ears, these Pokemon have great senses of hearing, able to pick out the sound of prey moving even in the roughest of waters. In addition, the bubbly pattern of them acts as a form of camouflage against the enemies. Also, they're known to help drowning creatures by blowing a bubble raft to keep them afloat. So yeah, pretty wholesome line that I'm still not sure why they start out as normal, or why Azurill is so sad. Oh well. Don't be fooled by their appearance. These guys are not grass types. This is the Sudowoodo line. Based on petrified trees, they start out as Bonsly, who, much like Munchlax, appeared in several Gen 3 spin-off games before the Gen 4 games officially came out. Bonsly prefer arid areas with little water, and they'll often be seen crying. However, they're not doing it because they're sad, rather it's a way to get rid of excess water. This line really doesn't like water. When they learn the move Mimic, they evolve into Sudowoodo. This Pokemon pretends to be a tree in order to deceive enemies. However, like I said, they hate water and will immediately flee if exposed to this stuff. Also, their imitation has one fatal flaw. Their leaves stay green in the winter, meaning they're very easy to spot during that time. So, yeah, they still got a few kinks to work out. Also, female Sudowoodo have shorter antlers, so that's a thing. Overall, an interesting Pokemon line and a weird choice for the first pure rock type. Hoppip is a pink cat-like bulb thing. Hoppip are very light creatures easily blown away by wind, so as such they always have to make sure their feet are planted on the ground, and they also hold on to each other as to not end up in another country. At level 18, they evolve into Skiploom. Now green and with a flower on its head, this Pokemon is like a living thermometer, as the flower on its head will react to different temperatures, with it being fully open when it's hot, and closed when it's cold. At level 27, they evolve into Jumpluff, a Pokemon that spends all of its time riding the wind, spreading its seeds across the land. When they run out of seeds, they die. So yeah, weird cat dandelion creatures. Not much to say here. Apom is a monkey who takes prehensile tail literally, as in they have a hand on their tail. Also, they might be based on those creepy symbol monkey toys due to its permanent smile, but that's just a theory. Apom's tail is capable of grabbing onto branches and quickly swinging them from tree to tree. However, because of how advanced their tail hand is, their actual hands are a lot worse for wear, and as such are barely used. While leveled up knowing the move Double Hit, they evolve into Ambipom, now with 2 tail hands and a bowl cut for some reason. This monkey's hands are even more advanced, capable of shelling nuts in just a few seconds. However, their real hands are even more useless, so that's a trade-off right there. Also, they're a social species, but they don't get along well with other monkey-like Pokemon, often getting into turf wars with them. And they communicate by holding hands. That's kinda sweet. Also, females of this line have shorter hair. So, yeah. Overall, very strange monkeys. SUNKERN is a sunflower seed that has some of the worst stats in the game. Well aware of this weakness, this guy spends all their time hiding from potential predators, since their only real defense mechanism is to shake their leaves aggressively, which, as you can imagine, isn't really the most intimidating thing in the world. I mean, just look at them. They're adorable. You really think anything's gonna be scared of that? Anyway, they have a diet consisting of morning dew, and they rarely move in order to preserve nutrients to evolve. It's also repeatedly said that they often fall from the sky, and their populations explode whenever there's a cold summer. When given a sunstone, they become Sunflora, the sentient sunflower, and when I say that, I mean it. All of its Pokedex entries just pretty much describe it as, it's a sunflower, but it's sapient. They follow the sun wherever it goes, making sure to get as much rays as possible. So, yeah. Nothing more to say here. From one of the weakest Pokemon to a sentient sunflower, I have no idea what to say here. Yanma is a cute little dragonfly. A cute dragonfly that often gives out shockwaves that break all glass in the immediate area. Thanks to their compound eyes, they can see 360 degrees without even moving their head. And much like real dragonflies, these guys are masters of the air, capable of hovering, turning on a dime, and more. When leveled up knowing the move Ancient Power, they evolve into Yanmega, which is based on the extinct Meganeura. Yanmega is a very powerful bug, capable of causing severe injury just by flapping its wings. It's also strong enough to lift a person, but it can't learn fly, and it mostly attacks by flying by their enemies and biting their head off. In fact, it's literally so that you have to be a pretty brave person to tame one of these things. Now, I guess the only remaining question is, why isn't Yanma a dragon type? It would have been the perfect thing to make a dragon. It's literally a dragonfly, and its Pokedex entry often talks about its raw power, just like most dragon types. But no, it's just the most generic bug typing you can give it, and after all this time, we still don't have a bug dragon. Whatever. Wooper is a Pokemon based on axolotls. These guys live in cold water and wander onto land whenever it's cold out. When on land, these guys will cover themselves in a poisonous film to keep themselves from dehydrating. At level 20, they evolve into Quagsire. Now based more on giant salamanders, Quagsire is very carefree and dopey, often bumping into things whenever they swim. However, they're so simple that they don't even care. They hunt by laying at the bottom of rivers and holding their mouths open until something swims in. Also, female Woopers have one less gill branch and female Quagsires have shorter dorsal fins. So, yeah. I'm running out of things to say with the dimorphisms in this series, and we're only at Gen 2. In the Paldea region, Wooper have been kicked out of rivers due to stronger water types. As such, they've become a purely terrestrial species with a strong poison coating their body. In addition, they're a group species, usually traveling in groups of 4 or more in order to protect themselves. In addition, in this region, they don't evolve into Quagsire, instead evolving into the blob-like Clodsire. When threatened, this Pokemon will release poison spines from its body in order to protect itself. However, it's not an aggressive species, and will even ferry Wooper across bodies of water on their back, so that's nice. So yeah, the axolotl Pokemon. Well, the first one anyway. MURKROW is a crow that is highly feared due to being seen as a bad omen. They're very greedy Pokemon attracted to shiny objects that it'll steal and put into its hoard. Also, they have a pretty devious defense mechanism. When they're being chased by something, they'll lead their enemies to a remote mountainous area, and then fly away, leaving their enemy stranded with no idea where it is. Okay. One piece of good news, though, is that if it gets close enough to its trainer, it'll share the shiny objects it collects. So now your fingerprints are on them, too. Did I say that was good news? Anyway, when given a Duskstone, they evolve into Honchkrow. These big birds are like mob bosses for the Murkrows, as just one call from it will attract all the Murkrow in the area, both for protection and to bring the Honchkrow food. However, if one of the Murkrow fails them, then they will punish them. And no, we don't find out what this punishment is. Oh, and they don't just punish them right there. No. They will find where they live and punish them. So, that's lovely. Also, they have perfect memory when it comes to who betrayed them. So yeah, don't mess with the Crow Mafia. Also, female Murkrow have, longer, head feathers. Yeah, that's a thing. Misdreavus was the first pure ghost type as well as the only ghost type in Gen 2. This Pokemon loves playing tricks on humans, often sneaking up on them and screaming in their ears to scare them. In fact, those pearls around its neck are actually where they absorb fear, which is apparently their sustenance. These Pokemon spend all their time honing their practice in order to be as frightening as possible. When given a Duskstone, they evolve into Mismagius. This Pokemon resembles a witch and is constantly chanting incantations. Whoever hears them will either be cursed or given a spell of happiness. Oh, and these curses can even include horrible visions. And no, we don't find out what that means, so that's fun. Also, they can do love spells, so some people actively seek them out. I really hate that. I genuinely hate that. In Gen 9, we were introduced to the Paradox Pokemon Fluttermane, which appears to be Misdreavus' past equivalent. Sadly, though, like most Paradox Pokemon, we don't get much lore. All we really get is that it's thought to be the ghost of a pterosaur. So, that's a thing. So yeah, this line is yet another ghost type that loves tormenting humans for fun. Get used to that, as that's basically the entire theme of ghost types. Unknown is a strange creature that comes in many forms that are shaped like the Latin alphabet, as well as a question mark and exclamation point. Early writing in the Pokemon worlds resembled this creature, and there is much debate as to if Unknown inspired the writing or not. By themselves, Unknown can't really do much. In fact, they only learn one move, and it's not even a very good one. However, it is said that when they come together in groups, they can be truly frightening in their abilities. As in, when there's enough of them, they can even warp reality itself. One of the most interesting unknown moments is from the Gen 2 remake games Heart Gold and Soul Silver, where in an event that involves the Pokemon Arceus, more on him in Part 4, a large group of unknowns surround him, implying there may be a connection. Popular fan theory is that Unknown helped Arceus shape the universe, since it's mentioned that he did it with 1,000 hands despite being a quadruped. As such, people think Unknown were those hands. Regardless, Unknown will forever remain a very mysterious Pokemon, and we may never get a full answer as to what their deal is. Wobbuffet is a punching bag. Literally. Starting out as Wynaut, these Pokemon spend most of their time fighting in order to toughen themselves up for the role they serve after they evolve. They also eat fruit, and their tail is an indication of their mood. More on the tail in just a bit, though. At level 15, they evolve into Wobbuffet, a Pokemon with a very simple but very annoying gimmick. You see, Wobbuffet doesn't actually learn moves that deal direct damage. Instead, all of its moves are counters, meaning that whatever hits it will end up hitting its opponent for twice the damage done to it. And if you try to poison it, too bad, it also knows Safeguard, which prevents it from getting status ailments. Oh, and as a last resort, they also know the move Destiny Bond, which makes it so that if it gets knocked out, then the Pokemon that finishes it off will also get knocked out. Oh, and they have the ability called Shadow Tag, which means that you can't run away or swap out Pokemon. So I hope you're leading with something strong against Psychic, or you're in for a fun time. Lore-wise, there's not much to mention, as it just talks about how it's a counter-attacker and things like that. But it is mentioned that it gets very protective of its tail, which is a small black strip with eyes on it. Because of this, it's led to the theory that the tail is the actual body, and that the blue part we see is the real tail, or something like that. I forget exactly how the theory goes. Also, female Wobbuffet have lipstick, because I guess they know how to use makeup. Cool. Girafarig is the palindromical giraffe. From the front, it may look like your typical giraffe, but its tail actually has a mind of its own, and in fact, it's where its psychic energy comes from. Although not fully sapient, the tail acts as a lookout, making sure nothing sneaks up on Girafarig while it's browsing. And since it doesn't need to sleep, the tail also acts as a lookout there. In addition, sneaking up on Girafarig will cause the tail to bite you. Interestingly, in its early design, it had a full-on second body instead of the tail head thing, making its name being a palindrome make even more sense. Also, female Girafarig have less brown on them, so yeah. When it learns the move Twin Beam, they evolve into Pharaoh Giraffe. The tail now has enveloped the Pokemon's head, both acting like a shell that the Pokemon can use to bash things, but it also increased their psychic power immensely. So yeah, Psychic Giraffe. Not bad. PINECO is a Pokemon based on bagworms. It spends all of its days hanging around trees it glued itself to, waiting for bugs types to fly by so they can eat them. But it's never actually said how they eat. But I guess hard work and determination can do wonders. Their pinecone-like appearance also helps protect them from predators, and they can also blow up. Yeah. At level 31, they evolve into Forretress. Now covered in cannons, these Pokemon will shoot bits of its steel hard shell at anything that bothers it. And much like Cloyster, what's inside the shell is a mystery due to how tough it is. So yeah, not much to say about this line. They're tough bagworms. That's all you really need to know. Dunsparce is kinda infamous in the fandom for how nothing it is. It was ridiculously hard to find in Gen 2, and even if you found it, it could run away. However, when you catch it, you find that it's a very mediocre Pokemon that doesn't really offer anything. Yeah, as you'll quickly realize, single-stage Pokemon tend to either be really good or really bad, and Dunsparce fell in the latter camp. Okay, enough clowning on it, let's talk about it. Dunsparce is based on the Japanese cryptid known as the Tsuchinoko, I think that's how it's pronounced, which in a nutshell is a fat snake with a thin tail. Dunsparce is a skittish species that when threatened will drill underground in order to escape. In fact, Gen 7's Pokedex says that seeing one is lucky. So, yeah. They also get along well with Diglets. And they can also sort of fly, but not really. So for 2 decades, Dunsparce was a Pokemon everybody clowned on, but then in Gen 9, it finally got an evolution, the Dunsparce. It just became segmented, and it can either have 2 segments or 3. But there's literally no difference gameplay-wise between the 2 forms. All the Pokedex gives us is that they lead Pokemon out of their nests and that the forms are determined by DNA. So yeah, still a nothing Pokemon, and I will continue to clown on this thing, so tough luck, Dunsparce. But hey, maybe soon you'll gain the new evolution, Dunsparce! Or something like that, I don't know. At first you might think Gligar is based on bats due to its appearance, but it's actually based on the scorpion fly, which is a fly that has a fake scorpion tail. This is pretty evident by the fact that it's literally in the bug egg group, like other Pokemon based on bugs. Unlike the real scorpion flies, which tails are completely harmless, Gligar's is very real. It hunts by latching onto their prey's face in order to distract them. Then they inject their stinger into the creature, pumping them full of deadly venom. When given the Razor Fang at night, they evolve into Gliscor. This Pokemon is a bloodsucker, swooping down on prey and sucking them dry. Their tail can also now be used as an appendage, allowing it to swoop prey off the ground without ever being noticed thanks to their silent flight. Gliscor is an expert glider, with it being said that if there was a wind current powerful enough, then it could probably fly around the entire planet without ever flapping its wings. So yeah, pretty scary line, but I think that most Pokemon fans have one question when it comes to Gligar. Why are they ground type? Nothing in the Pokedex mentions the ground. They don't seem to have any connection to ground. They're not made of any earth-like substance. And emphasis is placed on her being poison. So why are they ground and not poison for the poison or bugs since they're based on scorpion flies? Well, that might be a mystery we never solve. The end. Snubbull is a pink bulldog. Although it looks intimidating and aggressive, it's mentioned that this is just an act they put on to scare off things that bother them. In truth, they're very friendly and cowardly Pokemon that are popular pets. So, much like real bulldogs, they might look tough at first, but they're just big softies. At level 23, they evolve into Granbull, which, much like its previous stage, is actually a big wuss that just puts on a menacing act. In fact, it's mentioned that they're even more timid than Snubbull. However, despite its friendly demeanor, they can be pretty nasty in combat thanks to their large fangs that can severely damage whatever it bites. Luckily though, it only uses these chompers as a last resort, so they're perfectly safe Pokemon to leave around your kids. I gotta give Game Freak credit for not making the Bulldog Pokemon scary, eat your face off, eat your baby alive dogs like basically every other piece of media does. Bulldogs already have a bad enough reputation, and I'm glad these games aren't perpetuating it. Always remember, kids, no breed of dog is inherently aggressive. It's all about who raised them. Qwilfish is a pufferfish. A poor swimmer. When this fish is threatened, it'll swallow nearly 3 gallons of water in order to inflate itself. And then it'll launch its spikes out, injecting toxins into its attacker, causing him to faint. Now, while regular Qwilfish doesn't belong to a family, in the past, certain breeds of Qwilfish ended up being part dark type. Fishermen hate these guys thanks to how if they get caught on a line, they'll make them spray poison at the angler, which as you can imagine, is not something most people like. When this Qwilfish, and stay with me, uses the move Barb Barrage 20 times in the strong style, they will evolve into Overqwil. I know the evolution method seems like a mouthful, but trust me, when we get to Gen 8 and beyond, you'll see that this franchise has some really interesting way to evolve Pokemon. Anyway, Overqwil is very aggressive, covered in large spikes that it'll use to savagely attack Pokemon, which has earned it the nickname of Sea Fiend. Also, they eat poison for nourishment, so that's fun. I guess at some point the evil Qwilfish mellowed out and completely forgot how to use their evolutionary move, so I think it's safe to say Overqwil is extinct. The end. Shuckle is a thing. While it appears to be based on turtles, its bug typing and worm-like appearance seems to suggest otherwise. In fact, what exactly Shuckle's based on is debatable, with the answer that makes the most sense being that Shuckle's based on endoliphs, which are a type of mold that inhabit the insides of rocks. However, this wouldn't explain why they're bug and not grass type. Okay, enough about its origins, let's just talk about Shuckle the Pokemon. Shuckle likes collecting berries and storing them in its shell. Inside of the shell, the berries mix with Shuckle's bodily fluids, which turns the berries into a, quote, delicious juice. Doesn't that just sound appetizing? Hey kids, who wants to drink worm turtle juice? Anyway, Shuckle is also notable for having the highest defense stat in the franchise, in exchange for a terrible attack stat. However, Shuckle can use the move Power Trip, which swaps its defense and attack stats. Meaning that if it does that, it'll have the highest attack stat in the game. Yes, really. Also, under the right conditions, SHUCKLE is capable of dealing over 700 million points of damage. Which, to quote a video I used to watch all the time as a kid, is enough to faint every Pokemon you've ever fought or ever will fight. So yeah, oh wait, can't say that. Darn it. Don't messle with SHUCKLE. It's not the same. Heracross was the first bug type that wasn't complete garbage after the early game. This rhinoceros beetle brought us the first actually good bug type move, Mega Horn, which opened the floodgates for a bug to actually become a type worth using. So thanks Heracross for your service. This beetle boy loves nectar, spending most of its time sipping the stuff from flowers. However, if disturbed, they will use its horns to launch whatever bothers them into the stratosphere. Oh, also, Heracross can lift 100 times its weight, meaning they can lift well over 10,000 pounds. So yeah, don't get between them and their honey, unless you want a free trip to space. When Heracross Mega evolves, it resembles a Hercules beetle and can outlift 500 times its own weight. One downside, however, is that it tends to be sore after they evolve, so only use it sparingly if you want your Heracross to be happy. So yeah, Heracross, the savior of bug types. What's not to love? Also, female Heracross have a heart-shaped horn, but, yeah. SNEASEL is a weird weasel-like creature based on a Japanese yokai called a kametachi, I think that's how it's pronounced, which are weasels with sharp claws that ride on winds. SNEASEL are described as being very vicious, using their sharp claws to tear prey and their attackers to shreds. However, their main food source is eggs, which they steal by scaring off the parents from their nest. They've been even known to work together to steal them, although they often get into fights over who actually gets to keep the eggs they stole, so, double-edged method. When given a razor claw at night, Sneasel will evolve into Weavile. Unlike Sneasels, which do not really get along, Weavile are deadly pack hunters, often in groups of 4 or 5. They're very coordinated, sending messages to each other by leaving marks on boulders, and when they work together they can bring down Pokémon far larger than them, or take down Pokémon of hard-to-crack defenses like a lowland Sandshrew. In addition, their claws are said to give frostbite to whatever gets slashed by them. In the past, there was a breed of Sneasel that had evolved to be poison fighting types, which is theorized to be due to their less harsh habitats. In this form, Sneasel has venom constantly dripping from its claws that get injected into whatever it scratches, making taking down enemies a breeze. Also, this breed does not evolve into Weavile, but rather, if you give it a razor claw during the day, it'll evolve into Sneaseler, which, unlike Weavile, is a solitary hunter that is debatably far deadlier thanks to its venom and physical prowess. But I guess eventually this breed went extinct and the Ice Dark type ones flourished. So yeah, scary weasels. Lovely. Also, females of this line have shorter ears, so that's a thing. TEDDIURSA is a cute little teddy bear with a crescent moon on its head. These little guys love honey, always searching around for comb beehives in order to get some of that liquid gold. And when they find it, the crescent on their head glows, and they will continually lick their paws with the stuff. They love honey so much that they've actually found a way to make their own by blending together fruit and pollen, so they're pretty clever little bears. At level 30, they evolve into Ursaring, which sadly is one of those just their real animal Pokemon, since all of its dex entries just talk about how it can climb trees and it likes to eat berries, so that's kind of disappointing. However, in the past, if exposed to a peat block under the full moon, then Ursaring will evolve into Ursaluna. This Pokemon lives in swamplands and is said to have control over peat moss. So yeah, pretty cool, and I'm glad they brought back the moon motif. Now we just need a Noctowl evolution that brings back Hoot Hoot's time gimmick, and I'll be satisfied. Also, female Ursaring have shorter shoulder fur, so that's a thing. Slugma is a pile of lava in the shape of a slug. Slugma has no blood. Instead, molten lava takes care of the role of, nutrient carrying, and if it ever stops moving, then Slugma will harden and petrify. As such, they don't sleep, and instead just keep slithering along in search of hot places. At level 38, they evolve into Magcargo. Now with a rocky shell on its back, this Pokemon is now a snail instead of a slug. The shell is actually hard and skinned, and is very fragile. Even the slightest bump will reduce its shell to dust. Magcargo is rather infamous due to the fact that it's described as being 18,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which is twice as hot as the surface of the sun. So yeah, stay away from these guys unless you want an instant tan, and then die. So yeah, lava slugs. Pretty cool. Except for the part where Magcargo is 4 times weak to water, but let's not worry about that. The SWINUB line can best be described as a cross between boars and mammoths. Starting out as SWINUB, this weirdly sad little guy has a great sense of smell, constantly sniffing the ground for food. Sometimes it even ends up uncovering hot pools of water, which is nice. At level 33, they evolve into Piloswine. This Pokemon's long fur is great at protecting it from the cold, but it also has the side effect of blocking its vision. Luckily, though, its sense of smell is so good that it doesn't need sight to find food. Swinub also has tusks that it can use as a defense mechanism and as a way to dig up food. When they learn the move Ancient Power, they'll evolve into the massive Mammothswine. This mammoth-esque Pokemon is super strong and has tusks made of ice. Cave paintings from a long time ago indicate that Mammothswine used to be very common during the Ice Age, but something caused the numbers to droop. In fact, they were thought to be extinct for the longest time. Now, I find this an interesting claim because Piloswine and Swinub have never been described as rare, so it just makes me wonder what it means when only one of an evolution line is described as being extinct. I don't know. Maybe people just refuse to teach the Piloswine ancient power or something, I don't know. But regardless, Mammothswine has also been described as being capable of being encased in ice for thousands of years with no ill effect. So yeah, don't mess with the mammoth pigs. And females have shorter tusks. CORSOLA is a sentient mass of coral, described as being highly prized for its horns due to their very dazzling beauty. If CORSOLA loses one of its branches, it'll just grow back in a day. This also comes in handy for diverting predators, since they can just tear off one of their branches in order to feed them and make them go away. As for what they eat, well, they suck nutrients out of the water, so that's a thing. Sadly for Corsola, in the Galar region, due to rising ocean temperatures and pollution, this Pokemon has been wiped out. Sort of. You see, in this region, Corsola is a husk of its former self, being a pure ghost type. This Pokemon will curse anyone who steps on it, and it now feeds on the life forces of other creatures. This version of Corsola actually evolves too at level 38 into Cursula. This Pokemon's soul is surrounded by ectoplasm, which contact with will cause the toucher to become stiff as a stone. So remember, kids, be nice to nature, or it could come back to haunt you. Remoraid is a remora in the shape of a gun. Like real remoras, they latch onto larger creatures in order to feast on parasites. However, they're also active hunters that are capable of bringing their own prey down thanks to the powerful blasts of water they can shoot from their mouth with deadly accuracy. In fact, they can accurately shoot targets from over 300 feet away. Because of this, they have been nicknamed the Snipers of the Sea. At level 25, they evolve into Octillery, and yes, I know, a remora evolves into an octopus? That's stupid. In fact, even one of the later games mentions that for the longest time, no one knew that there was a connection between these two. And look, while I agree it could have been a bit clearer what the evolution here is going for, it makes a lot more sense if you think about it like this. See, Remoraid is vaguely gun-like, while Octillery is vaguely tank-like. So if you don't think of it as a fish becoming an octopus and instead think about it as a gun becoming a tank, it suddenly makes a lot more sense. So, yeah. Anyway, Octillery is a deadly predator that wraps its tentacles around its prey and then bashes its very hard head against them in order to kill the tragic fish so that it can be devoured. However, if the foe is too strong, Octillery will release a cloud of ink in order to get away. In addition to blinding the foe, the ink also has a special property that blocks the foe's sense of smell, ensuring that it can't be followed. So yeah, don't mess with the Remora puss. Also, females have shorter suction cups, so yeah. Delibird is a penguin that looks like Santa Claus. This Pokemon has a unique tail that resembles the sack St. Nick carries in order to deliver toys. This tail is full of food that it stores for later. This Pokemon is very generous, often giving its food to hungry people and Pokemon. In fact, it's said that they once helped a guy reach the top of Mount Everest, later referred to just as a high mountain in order to solidify the whole not being on Earth thing. But it's also said that since they're omnivores, they're just as likely to offer you bugs as they are fruit, so be careful. In Gen 9, we were introduced to the Paradox Pokemon Iron Bundle, which carries around a machine that can shoot huge blasts of ice and is theorized to have been built by an ancient civilization. You know what I think would be a cool Pokemon? If there was like a predator for the species that's like a leopard seal, mixed with Krampus. If no one's ever made that yet, I'll be very disappointed. Mantine is a Pokemon based on the mighty Manta Ray, starting out as Mantike, because for some reason they gave this of all Pokemon a baby form. I don't get it either. Anyway, this little guy is very friendly, swimming alongside other aquatic life forms as well as humans. It's also said that their pattern depends on region, but that hasn't been reflected in gameplay. If you level it up with a Remoraid in the party, Mantike will evolve into Mantine, which unfortunately is one of those Pokemon that's just a more advanced version of its real animal. It glides along in the water like it's flying, it has Remoras in the Horror Remoraid, and it leaps out of the water. The only real difference is that they can actually fly, so there's that. Also, we got Anglerfish, we got Remoras, and we got Rays before we got a shark Pokemon. What the heck? Skarmory is a metal bird thing that's often thought to be based on origami cranes. Now you might think that having feathers is hard to steal and make it hard to fly, but this Pokemon is described as being surprisingly light, allowing them to fly at pretty fast speeds. Now, their armor mainly came around due to how they're born in thorny bushes, causing them to have to grow a thick hide in order to protect themselves from the brambles. Their feathers are also super sharp, having been used in the past as swords and used today in the present as cooking knives. Also, they can rust, so they tend to hide for cover on rainy days. So yeah, metal birds, pretty nice. The Houndour line is based on the concept of hellhounds. Houndour is a pack hunter working together to take down prey. They communicate with their pack by squeaking and barks that only other Houndours can understand, and they also howl in order to announce their territory. However, despite their scary appearance and dark type, they've also been described as being very loyal pets, so that's kinda nice. At level 24, they evolve into Houndoom. Houndoom is a very feared Pokemon, as just one growl from it will send most other Pokemon packing. Like Houndour, they hunt in packs, with the alpha being whichever one has the sharpest horns. Also, it's said that if you're burned by their flame, then the pain will never go away, so that's fun. In addition, it's said that during ancient times it was thought that they were Death himself. So yeah, that's pretty scary. Houndoom also has a Mega Evolution, where its front is now enveloped by the bony things. And, like Scizor, it's said that Mega Houndoom is actively melting, putting it in great pain. You ever wonder if Mega Evolution is something protested against in the Pokemon world? Because it seems like almost all of them describe it as the Pokemon going through some sort of massive pain. I just gotta wonder if anyone ever questions the ethics of doing it. I'm not gonna get into the debate over whether Pokemon is ethical or not. It is, it's been shown Pokemon like fighting, but that's kind of a bridge too far in my opinion if you're actively gonna kill your Pokemon just to make them stronger for a bit. Ugh. Also, female Houndoom has shorter horns. So yeah, the literal devil dogs. Pretty cool. Phanpy is a cute little elephant that just so happens to be extremely dangerous to be around. See, Phanpy is very excitable, and it loves swinging its trunk around. But unfortunately, they're very strong, and as such, they can often cause serious damage to anything they hit. And I just can't imagine trying to scold this thing after it hits you. Would you really want to punish something for being happy? I mean, yeah, it hit you and probably broke your arm, but just look at it. Do you really want to see that thing sad? I don't know, I just feel like a monster if I had to punish it. Anyway, moving on, at level 25 they evolve into Donphan. This Pokemon's hide resembles a tire, and this is no coincidence as its favorite attack method and method of locomotion is to curl up in a ball and roll around. They also have very dangerous tusks that are status symbols among them, as herds are led by which Donphan has the largest tusks, and like real elephants, the female's tusks are shorter. Interestingly enough, Donphan has two different paradox forms. One is from the past and is known as Great Tusk, which resembles a mammoth, and from the future we have Iron Treads, which is thought to be alien in origin. I don't know why they picked Donphan of all Pokemon to give two paradox forms to. It's never really been a fan favorite or a very notable Pokemon, but I guess they just decided to do that for some reason. I don't know. Stantler is a deer with a very weird face and a huge tail. They're often described as having bizarre powers, in that if one is looked into its antlers, then you would be sent into a trance. In fact, the spheres on their antlers can even be turned into sleeping powder. Sadly, though, this also led them being a threatened species due to overhunting, so that's kinda sad, I guess. But then again, I don't really care about these weird deer, so whatever. If Stantler uses the move Psyshield Bash in the Agile style 20 times, it'll evolve into Wydeer, which, like Mr. Mime, has the ability to construct invisible objects with its mind, and its fur is popular winter clothes. Sadly, though, in the present time, Stantler can't use this move, so I guess it just became lost knowledge among the deer or something like that. And now I have spent way too much time talking about Stantler, so let's just move on. Smeargle is a Pokemon with a very interesting gimmick. This dog artist only learns one move, which is called Sketch, and it learns it multiple times. What does Sketch do, you might be asking? Well, you see, when Sketch is used, it'll be permanently replaced by the last move used by the opponent, meaning that Smeargle can learn any move in the game, with a few exceptions like event moves or moves that would be a bit too overpowered, but, yeah. Because of this, Smeargle is an interesting Pokemon to face, since you never know what it's capable of. The only thing keeping Smeargle from being a game breaker is the fact that it doesn't have the best stats, so it's really more of a novelty than a competitively valuable Pokemon. Lore-wise, it's mentioned that the paint on Smeargle's tail is an unidentifiable fluid that it's constantly secreting, and it uses it to mark its territory. So yeah, the artistic dogs. Not much to say here. The legendary beasts are a group of mammalian carnivore-like creatures that have incredible power over the elements. These fierce beasts came into existence when a tower known as the Brass Tower was struck by lightning, setting it on fire. 3 unidentifiable Pokemon were killed by the blaze, and after the rain put out the flames, the legendary Pokemon Ho-Oh ended up resurrecting them into the forms we see today, with each one being endowed with a power related to the incident. So let's go through them, shall we? First, we got Raikou, who represents the bolt that ignited the tower. This Pokemon can create storm clouds to fire off thunderbolts, and its roar has been described as making the ground feel like it has been struck by lightning. Then there's Entei, who represents the deadly blaze, who shoots fire hotter than lava, and whenever this mighty beast roars, a volcano erupts somewhere. Then we got Suicune, the embodiment of the rain that ended the horrible event. This Pokemon has control over winds, and it purifies any water it touches. Legendary beasts are also notable for introducing the fan-favorite concept of roaming legendaries! Yay! You see, unlike other legendaries who are found in a static location, you have to actively hunt down these guys across the map. And they can run away and have very low catch rates, so have fun with that! Like I said, fans love roaming legendaries! Who doesn't love these guys? Ugh. Now, despite having concrete backstories, the Pokedex entries have always been weird with these guys. For one, it says that a new Entei is born when a volcano is, which is weird to think about, that they're a species, but okay, weird. Then we got the biggest curveball in their backstory, the Paradox Pokemon Walking Wake. This is a very confusing Pokemon since it implies that the legendary beast always had their powers. Now, personally for the Pokedex thing, I don't take it very seriously. Since there have been contradictions in the Pokedex before, and there's more direct evidence for the tower backstory than there is for the volcano birth thing. And as for Walking Wake, well, it does look like a pretty old species, so maybe when they were resurrected they were given the powers of their ancestors or something like that. That's just my theory. So, thanks for watching another episode of Pokemon Questions Solved. And now, we move on. Here we have the Godzilla Pokemon. Starting as Larvitar, this little guy loves to eat dirt and rocks. In fact, in order to evolve, they need to eat an entire mountain in order to have enough nutrients to pupate. Yes, I said pupate. At level 30, they evolve into Pupitar, a cocoon. I don't get it. These guys are reptiles, and I don't think Godzilla ever had a pupa form, so I'm just wondering where they got this idea from. Regardless, this Pokemon shell is as hard as steel, and despite appearing inert, they're perfectly capable of moving thanks to gases they store inside of them that they can fire in order to propel themselves. It's said that a headbutt from them can even level an entire mountain. Now, that just begs the question, which is more impressive, eating a mountain or leveling it? I'll leave that up to you to decide. At level 55, they evolve into Tyranitar. Free of the cocoon, these Pokemon are very tough, said to be impervious to most types of damage, and as such they're constantly itching for a fight. Luckily for everyone, though, they have a code of honor as they only fight foes they deem worthy. But don't let your guard down yet. If it rampages, it can leave entire cities as rubble. And they're also said to not care about what other beings feel, so pretty scary all around. Tyranitar also has a Mega Evolution. In this form, it's said that its back split open, causing it to be in intense pain that can only live through due to its heightened aggression. In fact, it's said that there's a possibility they don't even hear their owner's orders and are just attacking out of pure rage. Like I said earlier, Mega Evolutions seem like something people would protest against, but that's never really been a plotline. In Gen 9, we were given the Paradox Pokemon Iron Thorns, which is pretty clearly a takeoff on Mechagodzilla. And much like every other Paradox Pokemon, we're not really given much lore of them. It's just like, oh, this Pokemon's mysterious and it might be based on a magazine or something. All we get from it is that it might be from a billion years in the future, so that's a thing. So yeah, Pokezilla. Pretty sweet. Actually, before we continue, I have a funny story involving this line. See, when I played Pokemon Black as a kid, I caught a Pupitar, and, well, it was female, and I knew it evolved into a creature that looked like a T-Rex, so I named it T-Rex Girl. I still, get embarrassed when I remember that. Anyway, moving on. Ho-Oh and Lugia are a pair of bird-like creatures that are highly revered in the Johto region, with 2 towers dedicated to them, although one of them was the Brass Tower, so it's burned down. Unlike other legendaries, we don't have much lore-wise as to their backstories or what exactly their primary function is, which is interesting to note. Starting with Lugia, this guy is not a water type for some reason, even though he's the guardian of the sea and he's always associated with water, yet not a water type. Lugia has control over water, and it's said that when it flaps its wings, a storm will rain for 40 days. Now, one thing to note about Lugia is that it was never supposed to be in the games, with it being created purely for one of the anime's movies. However, it was so popular that Lugia was added to the games, which just makes me wonder, what was Gen 2 originally going to be like? Was their lore of the 2 towers still going to exist? And what was the mascot for Pokemon Silver going to be in that case? A lot of questions, but we'll probably never get an answer to that question. But it's just kind of fun to think about. And of course, I can't talk about Lugia without bringing up Shadow Lugia, which is a shadow Pokemon, which basically in the 2 spin-off games Pokemon Coliseum and XD Gala Darkness, there are Pokemon that have been corrupted and turned into what are known as Shadow Pokemon. Usually they just have a black aura around them, but Shadow Lugia was so corrupted that its entire biology changed. Now, this is pretty cool, I have to admit, but sadly you don't actually get to keep it since after you get it, you have to cure it. Boo! Now we got Ho-Oh, who was the very first Gen 2 Pokemon revealed to the public, as he appeared at the end of the very first episode of the anime, although they've never really done much of that plotline, which is a bummer. Ho-Oh is said to only appear before those with a pure heart, and it's said that if you see it, then you'll be blessed with eternal happiness. It's also noted that the colors you see are not the colors it's always in, as it's said that depending on the angle you look at it, you'll see different colors, which is interesting to think about. Now, with Ho-Oh and Lugia being the first box legendaries, it should be noted that unlike later box legendaries, these guys have basically nothing to do with the plot of the Gen 2 games. They're just kinda there. So yeah, during this generation, legendary Pokemon were still just powerful Pokemon. They didn't really have any lore of them yet. And we'd have to wait another few years until Gen 3 when we would finally get legendaries that not only tied into the plot of the game, but also ones that had a lot more lore to them. And oh boy, will those be fun when we get to them. Celebi is a grassy fairy creature that is this generation's equivalent to Mew. It's revered as the guardian of the forest, and they're a time traveler, capable of going to any point in history that it chooses. However, it prefers times of peace for obvious reasons. In addition, it also mysteriously leaves eggs whenever it returns from a large trek in the forest, and they can heal any plant they touch, and they can even cure wounds of animal-like creatures, so that's interesting. And just like Mew, Celebi is not actually available in the game itself, you can only get it through events. In this case, they actually made a little storyline for it, since instead of just giving you the Pokemon like what they did with Mew, you're given an object called the GS Ball, which, fun fact, is what the coloration of this generation's slides is based on, and when you're given it, you have to take it to a shrine in the forest, and when you do, Celebi descends and battles you. So yeah, time-traveling onion fairy. Pretty nice. Well, that concludes Johto. See you guys next time when I talk about the Pokemon introduced in IGN's favorite generation. And unlike last time, I've only talked about 2 Generation 3 Pokemon so far, so, this will take a bit longer. But hey, I'd say this is the point where Pokemon start to get more interesting besides just a dex and their appearance, so this should be fun to get to. So, see you guys next time. Goodbye.